Welcome back to Living in the Pacific Northwest with Hal Byrd. I'm Hal Byrd, and on today's video, I'm going to be giving you a lay of the land when it comes to Southwest Washington. So today we're going to cover the 5 boroughs, as my husband Jared coined it, of Southwest Washington and Clark County, Washington. So if that's something you're interested in, stay tuned. For those of you who don't know me, I am a licensed broker and realtor and certified relocation specialist in the Portland metro area, serving the Portland side in Oregon and also the Vancouver side, which is where I live. And today we're going to go over some of the cities in our county, the largest cities in our area, and talk about some of the pros and cons to each to help you decide what city might be a good fit for you. The reason for this channel is that when my husband and I relocated here 5 years ago, now there's tons of videos that are really useful about moving to Vancouver, but when we were looking, there wasn't. And when I got licensed, I wanted to be able to provide the resource that we were missing and help people who were kind of in our shoes, who were looking, maybe you're working remotely or you want to change in weather. There's a lot of climate refugees these days trying to get out of the southern part of the United States, or people who are looking for more temperate weather, people who are moving for retirement. There's tons of different reasons that Vancouver, Washington has been such a popular area to move to over the last few years. And we just wanted to be able to provide resources to you and hope to help you in your relocation and help you buy your home here. So if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in the Pacific Northwest, make sure to shoot me a text at 360-818-4438. I would be happy to help you on your relocation. I have people reach out to me every day who are looking to relocate to this area. And usually what happens is they stumble upon Vancouver, Washington first, or maybe they were looking in Portland and then they see Vancouver up north and they're like, why not check this part out? Because it seems like it's a suburb of Portland, which it is. So I find that most people find out about Vancouver first as a whole and then don't really know what Southwest Washington is. I didn't know that Southwest Washington was a thing before I moved here. But what happens is they look at Vancouver and then they kind of see, oh, there's this cool city, Camas, and oh, if I want to be even closer to the Gorge, I can live in Washougal, or I can go more north to Battleground to have like an even quieter, simpler life, or I can be in Ridgefield, which has a really good mix of outdoors and being newly developed. And so what ends up happening is people find Vancouver first and then expand their horizons throughout Southwest Washington and Clark County. And so today I kind of want to give you a lay of the land to kind of speed that process up for you so that if you found out about Vancouver and now you're like, well, there's actually these other cities that are interesting to me, what do I need to know about them? That's what this video is for. So without further ado, let's jump in to the first and largest city, which is Vancouver, Washington. The city of Vancouver, and I want to be specific because what a lot of people who are coming, especially from the East Coast, don't understand is that in our area, we have the city of Vancouver and then we have unincorporated Vancouver. So places like Salmon Creek and Hazeldale and Philida and Orchards, you will have a Vancouver address, but you are not in the city limits of Vancouver. So when I'm talking about the city limits of Vancouver, this is what I'm talking about. Some of the reasons that people like to live in Vancouver, I think that while the city management is not perfect, it's better than other cities I've lived in before. And I think they're doing a lot to bring development and opportunity to our area, to attract employers, to attract residents here who are committed to the fact that whether people like it or not, whether you're from here or you relocated here, Vancouver is going to continue to grow. And one of the biggest driving factors for that, in my opinion, is that if you look across the river at Portland, you have employers and businesses and retail shops that are closing their doors in Portland because they are not on board with the direction that the city of Portland is going. And I personally see over the next 10 years, Portland losing a lot of its attractions in terms of businesses that support the city. And so when you're thinking about building a new development, if you're gonna build a brand new hotel, are you going to open up a hotel in downtown Portland where they are often have boarded up shops and there's concerns about theft? I wouldn't say it's not quite as bad as it sounds as a resident of Vancouver who likes to go into Portland, but there are challenges that Portland is facing. And so if you are going to develop a brand new hotel, are you going to put it in downtown Portland, or are you going to look over the river at Vancouver, Washington and our downtown and waterfront area and be like, this place is safe, it's growing, the city is doing what they can to address the homeless issue because of our Stay Safe communities, which I'll show you what those are here. Vancouver, Washington actually started Stay Safe communities, and then Portland ended up mimicking what we're doing. So you have this small town of less than 200,000 people that is leading the way for a bigger city. That's my opinion. I might be a little biased. I've lived in Vancouver now for 5 years. And while it is absolutely not perfect, I think one thing, to give you an example of the way that I think the city council is not doing a great job, I don't think that they're requiring enough parking for new developments. So if you have a developer building a townhome, they might only require 1 parking spot per unit. Well, these days, more and more people are living with roommates, more and more people are living multi-generational. And so if you have a townhouse, which is typically going to attract younger people, people who are maybe just getting their footing in life or in their career, people who are older and don't want the maintenance, potentially multi-gen families, you need more parking spaces per unit than just 1. Like, I would like to see them get to 2. Sometimes you'll see 1.2, 1.5 per unit, but that's one thing that I wish the city would do better at, because especially when you look at the Heights neighborhood that has a development going on, a lot of that parking is going to overflow into neighborhoods. And that is not fair to the residents who have lived there. So that's an example of a frustration that I find with the city council. But that being said, they are doing a great job to attract and make the city more beautiful. When we moved here in 2018, the Vancouver waterfront didn't exist. Nobody went down there. And I remember going down there when it was under construction and like sneaking around and trying to peek over the fence. And now it's this beautiful attraction in downtown that is safe and quiet and beautiful for people of all ages, for families to go to. There's events at the park. They have concerts in the summer. There's so many great things that the city of Vancouver is doing. So you'll hear people in the comments, and if you look at any video about Vancouver, Washington, you hear people say, oh, the negative things about it. And nobody's pretending that it's perfect, but there's so much good stuff going on at the same time. So one of the cool things about living in the city limits of Vancouver is you have a lot of diverse neighborhoods. You have neighborhoods that are like downtown Vancouver that were built 100 years ago. I sold a home earlier this year that was built in 1900, 1900. And I did a video about that right here. Welcome or welcome back to Living in the Pacific Northwest with Hal Byrd. I'm Hal Byrd, and on today's mini episode, I am going to share a little bit about my client's house that he just closed today. Super, super excited. First time home buyer, bought an amazing property in downtown Vancouver and has walking distance. So for those of you who are like, I want to live somewhere where I can walk to bakeries and coffee shops and to go get pizza and go out to dinner and stuff like that, downtown Vancouver is definitely where you want to be. Then you have homes that are new construction. And the way that Vancouver has developed has been kind of interesting. I'll give you a brief history on that. There used to be a lot of people who had land and farms in the area, and gradually those pieces of property got sold off. So one of the things I tell my clients is that you could be driving through a neighborhood in Vancouver and you could see basically like a shack or a barn on like all this land, and you turn the corner and you'll see homes that were built in the 1960s, a bunch of ranch style homes, and you turn the corner and then you're in much more tightly packed brand new construction. There's a lot of variance between the neighborhoods, even if you're talking about within a particular area. The area that I would say is the most uniform in Vancouver is Fisher's Landing, because that area was developed over the last 20 years or so, 20 to 30 years, really starting in the 90s. Really starting in the 1990s and the early 2000s is when most of Fisher's Landing was developed. So all of the shopping is new over there. There's a lot of great things about that area of town. So we talked about diverse neighborhoods, the bustling downtown, some of the challenges that Vancouver is facing. And then obviously it doesn't take long to look at a map to see how close a proximity we have to not only Portland, which gives you access to all the big city things, but also to the river and water activities. There's several hikes and lakes and parks throughout the town. So that's the city limits of Vancouver. Now, when you move north from the city limits, you'll find Minnehaha, Hazel Dell, Philida, Lakeshore, Salmon Creek, Barberton, Mount Vista, Orchards, Five Corners, all of those areas. Those are all unincorporated areas of Vancouver. So if you live in those areas, you will have a Vancouver address, but you will not be in the city limits, meaning you don't vote for city council, you're not served by the Vancouver Police Department, you're served by the Sheriff's Department. It also means that your water doesn't come from the city of Vancouver like it does in the city limits. It comes from Clark PUD, which is our electric company. So everyone in Southwest Washington and Clark County is serviced by Clark Public Utilities. That is everyone's electricity company. However, if your city doesn't provide water, municipal water, then you will get your water from Clark Public Utilities. We've lived in both the city limits and in unincorporated Vancouver, and my personal opinion is that the water is a little bit harder when you're looking at the water that comes from Clark PUD. So there are a lot of great schools on both the east side and the west side of town. The Fisher's Landing area is a really popular area for schools, and then Salmon Creek and Valida also have schools that I find most of my clients are really attracted to or like the programs that their kids are in there. So whether you're looking for a historic home that's walkable in downtown Vancouver, or you're looking for more of a 90s, early 2000s built suburban home in Fisher's Landing, or something with a view, or something with private water access, looking down on the south part of Vancouver, or a starter home or a condo. There's so much variety to choose from within the city limits and unincorporated Vancouver, and each little pocket has a different feel. So please reach out to me if you want to talk about what you're looking for in a community, and I'd be happy to give you suggestions on homes that I think would work well for you. That brings us to our second largest city, which is Camas, Washington. With a population of just under 30,000 people, Camas, Washington is one of the most popular cities in Southwest Washington. And the reason for that is because of the highly rated schools. They have great reputations. You've got amazing properties and views. And it has, to me, the best of both worlds. You have access to all of the newer Fisher's Landing amenities that are on the Camas-Vancouver border, but you also have downtown Camas, which is a very quaint, former like mill town downtown that the city has been trying to revitalize and bring life to, and has great little shops and restaurants. And so whether you're looking for like cute, quaint, small town vibe, or you want access to nature at Camas Lake, or you want to use amenities like Costco and Home Depot and Walmart and Lowe's and what else is over there, natural grocers, everything there is going to be on 192nd, which is the dividing line between the city of Vancouver and the city of Camas. One of the things that is a must know about Camas is that it is one of the most expensive areas in Southwest Washington. It has some of the most exclusive communities. It's got some of the nicest developments, some of the biggest houses, some of the best views. And some of the most popular parts of Camas are in Prune Hill, which is up, it's called Prune Hill. It's on a hill, so you get really great views of the Columbia River. So you can get river views, you can get city views, you can feel like you live in a forest.
The Columbia River up here. I'm getting some speed as we go up the hill.
It's quite a hill.
Camas is also a good place if you want acreage, because some of the more rural outskirt parts of Camas, or unincorporated Camas, because again, there's city limits. And then if you go outside of the city limits, you'll still have a Camas address, but you won't always have city services. You'll have to look to the county for different things. But if you want something that feels rural, but you are still within 15 to 20 minutes of amenities like Costco and Trader Joe's and Fred Meyer and things like that, grocery stores, shops, restaurants, then Camas is a great place to look. So this city is very family friendly. Again, because of the schools, if people are like, I just want my kid in the best schools, they usually tell me they want to live in Camas. That's what I find with most of my clients, and people are willing to pay a premium for that because it is the most expensive area. But it also has great access to the outdoors. So you're getting a little closer to the Columbia River Gorge when you're going east from Vancouver, but it also has great lakes and trails like Round Lake and Camas Lake. You can go kayaking and stand-up paddleboarding and do all sorts of outdoor activities. There's golfing. So I think Camas is a really unique area and a very nice area if you are looking to relocate and you have the budget to live in Camas. Moving on to the third largest city in Clark County, we have the city of Battleground. And same thing applies to Battleground. You have city limits and then you have the outskirts or the unincorporated areas. Battleground is known for having its small town charm. So if you look on a map, you'll see that Battleground is actually south of Ridgefield. But when it comes to commuting, let's say into Portland, or if you want to go to downtown Vancouver for events or to Trader Joe's, different amenities, because Battleground isn't served by a freeway like I-5 and Ridgefield, it does take a little bit longer to drop into Vancouver. But that being said, you can do pretty much everything you need to do in Battleground. You'll still find yourself coming down to Vancouver for different things, but there's a Kaiser facility in Battleground. There's 2 major grocery stores, a Fred Meyer and a Safeway. Plus you have tons of roadside farm stands for people who are growing their own fruit and vegetables, people who keep chickens, people who are butchers. And so whether if you want fresh meat, fresh eggs, fruits and vegetables, you can even support local small businesses and small farmers who are looking to serve your community. And I think that's a great thing. So it definitely has a small town charm to it, but you still have some pretty good restaurants there. And it gives you definitely the feeling of being in a country vibe, if that makes sense. And it's pretty easy to get around because you have 2 main roads. And those 2 main roads are 503, which takes you from the south part of Vancouver, East Vancouver. As you head north on 503, you will enter Battleground. And that intersects with 502, which is the other major street that'll get you into Battleground from the west side, more towards Ridgefield, a little north of Vancouver. So there's 2 ways that you can get to Battleground, but I don't personally think that Battleground is ever gonna have a freeway running into it that makes it any faster. 503 is like a 2-lane highway. So as you are leaving Vancouver, 503 picks up as you come off 500, it kind of turns into 503/117th. So when you're still in unincorporated Vancouver and the Orchards area, same thing, Orchards area, which is unincorporated Vancouver, it will be northeast 117th Avenue. And as you keep going straight, so there will be stop signs there. And as you keep going straight, it'll turn into more of a 2-lane highway. And that will intersect with 502, which is also Main Street. And this is just a side note about Clark County. I would not recommend trying to learn the street numbers because as you go through these different areas, so as you go from the city of Vancouver to unincorporated Vancouver through Brush Prairie into Battleground, the street number changes. And I'll show you what I mean. As you come off of Highway 500, which cuts through the north part of the city of Vancouver limits and unincorporated Vancouver. So even though it's the north part of the city limits, it's kind of in the middle of Vancouver as a general area, not city limits. It's gonna turn 500 ends and becomes 503, which is northeast 117th Avenue. And as we follow this up through Orchards, it's gonna stay 117th. And then it's gonna switch to just being 503. And here's a good example. So right at this corner here where you have Space Age Fuel and a Chevron gas station, it switches from being 117th to 122nd Avenue. And that intersection on the west side is Southwest 40th Street, but as you cross the street, you're now on Northeast 179th Street. The numbers of the streets here do not make sense. And you kind of just have to learn them or use Google Maps and you'll learn your way around. But the street numbers, especially for people who didn't grow up here, are very confusing. Even for people who have grown up here, I know people who are native Vancouvers and they're like, these street numbers are weird. So we're still on 122nd Ave. And as we keep going north, now we're in Battleground, we're passing Eaton. And somehow it goes from being northeast 122nd Avenue to southwest 10th Avenue as you approach 502. And 502 is Main Street right there, but is not Main Street the whole way of 502. It goes from being northeast 219th Street and then it turns into Main Street. So that's something to know about Clark County. Our street names are probably one of the things, like if I had to make a top 5 pet peeves about Vancouver, so not major problems about living here, but just little things that bother me, the street numbers are definitely one of those things. As you pass through incorporated cities, unincorporated areas, and into new cities, the street numbers just change and there's not really any rhyme or reason, as you can see from what I just showed you. So that's something to know about Clark County in general. And I would say if I had to make a pet peeves list about Southwest Washington, so not major issues that are a big deal about living here, but just little things that kind of irk me, the street numbers would be one of those things. So wrapping up with Battleground, I would say you definitely get a strong sense of community here. There's availability for new construction. This area is a really good area for new construction. I think out of all the areas that actively have new construction going on in Southwest Washington, you get your most bang for your buck in Battleground. The biggest knock that my clients say about Battleground is that when it comes to the schools, the community often votes down, like you can look at the voting history, they often vote down school bonds. And so I've heard the opinion of some that their schools are not as well funded as they think they should be. I do have a client who works in the Battleground School District, and she absolutely loves working there. She's been really happy. She's also worked in Evergreen Public Schools and has said great things about both of those school districts. So again, everyone has an opinion. I just want to share with you what I hear when it comes to feedback from my clients. And again, everyone has different perspectives and interpretations of things. For me personally, when my stepson was a little bit younger, he's getting pretty close to being an adult, we looked at a homeschool program for him. And so I will put that out there. If you don't want to put your kids in public school, there are lots of private school options around, and there's also programs like Laurel Springs, which is a private online school for kids, and I'd be happy to do a video about what that looks like if you guys want more information on alternative schooling options that still get really good outcomes. So in Battleground, you do have new construction, but you also have the availability of larger lots. You can buy anything from a quarter acre, half acre, to there are several 5-acre lots available, and you can even go up from there. I think the largest reasonably priced lot that I saw recently that did have a house on it was about 36 to 40 acres, something like that. So if you are looking for some serious land, Battleground and the outskirts of Battleground are a great place to do that. Now we are on our 4th largest city, which is the city of Washougal. Washougal is on the very east part of Clark County, and depending on where you are in Washougal, there are unincorporated areas of Washougal that are actually in Skamania County. So Washougal is the border between Clark County and Skamania County. It has a population of just under 17,000 people. And my clients who live there love access to the Washougal River. They like the view. So if you go into downtown Vancouver, or if you want to go into Vancouver to run errands, like to go to Costco or something like that, and you come back along Highway 14, those are some of the best views you will ever see from your car.
I'm cracking up because I bet people who watch our videos think we're exaggerating about living here as like some kind of sales pitch. And then if you look at this, excuse my French, and it's mind-blowing. Like, you've been all over the world, I've traveled, you can't beat this. And it's literally 30, 45 minutes from freaking Vancouver and Portland.
So as you enter Washougal from Highway 14, which is the most common way to access Washougal, because do you remember how I mentioned how Camas gets very hilly? You've got Prune Hill, you've got Livingston Mountain, you've got tons of hilly areas. So Vancouver has, as you come off the river, a little bit of elevation and then it flattens out, and you might find some areas with rolling hills, like Salmon Creek has some rolling hills and stuff like that, but it's relatively flat. As you go east, you're starting to get into the Cascade Mountain Range. So as you move into Camas, you start to have more hills, which creates great views. So if you want views, you need to find hills. It can be challenging when people come to me and they have good sized budgets, I'm talking $1 million plus, and say they want flat land and a view. That is a little bit harder to find here. It does exist. I've found that on Prune Hill. I've found that in Washougal for clients where they have a section of flat land. They bought 5 acres and their land actually backs right up to the Washougal River, but you're gonna have hills if you want a view, usually. So Washougal is very picturesque to come into because you come in along the 14. Because of those hills, you won't really come in you definitely won't be coming from the north unless you live out there. And there are some back roads that will take you into Washougal from the west side of Washougal. Once you move east of Washougal, you're now in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, which has building restrictions. You can build homes out there, but there's a lot of restrictions on the color of the house, how many stories it can be. It has to blend in with the surroundings. So you cannot put some like modern, huge, I don't know, black and stainless steel looking house that's really reflective. Like it has to be be like brown and greens, and like your roof line has to not obstruct from the trees. There's all sorts of regulations on that. So if you want to be close to the Gorge and hiking, and you're like, I'm going to be out there every weekend and I don't want to drive from Ridgefield all the way to the Gorge, Washougal could be a good option for you. So you've got lots of activities for boating, fishing, hiking. You can swim in the Washougal River. There's like little swimming holes. You do not want to swim in the Columbia River because people drown. There's quite a bit of current, and it's also a very commercial river. There are barges and shipping containers going up and down the river, as well as recreational boating. So if you have a boat, small or large, or if you want to sea-doo or kayak on the Columbia, you can definitely do that, but it's not a swimming river. So when people want to go swimming, they might go to the Washougal River. Our lakes, like Vancouver Lake and Camas Lake, that you can swim. And you can also tube down. So if you want to park a car at the bottom, you can actually go tubing down the Washougal River. A lot of people do that in the summer. So Washougal is a little similar to Battleground to me in the sense that you feel a little tucked away from Vancouver. And not that Vancouver is like a lot of hustle and bustle, but it's definitely a little bit more laid back in Washougal. And you can kind of think of it as levels. So like Vancouver being like a top in terms of activity and commerce and busyness. And then as you go to Camas, it's, knocks it down a notch. And as you go to Washougal, it knocks it down another notch. And so if you're looking for a quiet way of life, something similar to Battleground where there are roadside farm stands and there's, a strong sense of community. People throughout Southwest Washington are very neighborly. I can't tell you how many people have invited my husband and I off the street. Like we've run into people and we're just talking on the street and they're like, oh, we did a kitchen remodel, you should come see it, and invite us in, and they don't know us from anyone. So that neighborly sense is throughout the area. But I think as you get to more rural parts, people have a stronger sense of community. There's more of a need to look out for each other because, for instance, when it snows, the cities don't usually plow. They might salt the roads, but they're not coming by your front door in your subdivision to plow your street. And if you live in a rural area where it's hilly and there's snow, you might have neighbors that get together and plow the snow together or things like that. So you just, if you live in a rural part of Washougal, there's not a grocery store 5 minutes down the road. So you kind of have to rely on your neighbors. The closer you are to the river, the more suburban it will feel in Washougal. The streets are lettered in Washougal, which is one of the few places that it makes sense. So as you get higher and higher on the streets, like if you look at Z Street is up on a hill. And those houses, you have a mix of new construction and you have a mix of older homes that have been there a long time that have a little bit more space. If you want to view, the south and western parts of Washougal are great for that because it just cascades as you come off the Columbia River. So great views to be had there. And then you can find all sorts of things. I had a client who bought a 3-story townhome for a multi-gen family, and the granddaughter lived in the lower level and they have an elevator. And so her mom was able to live on the top floor in this 3-story townhouse, even as she's aging. And not for a crazy price. They paid less than $450 2 years ago. So it just depends on what you're looking for, whether you're looking for a massive home with a view or you're looking for something a little bit more simple and modest. You can find it in Washougal as long as you don't mind being a little bit farther away from the airport. And we're still talking within 30 minutes. None of these areas are more than 30 minutes, maybe 35 minutes with traffic to the airport, unless you go into a rural area. Like if you live in Battleground, you're within 30 minutes of the airport. If you live in Ridgefield or Washougal, you are easily within 30 minutes of the airport. Now, if you live up Blue Sky Road or if you live up a windy mountain road, it's probably gonna take you 10 to 15 minutes just to get down to the town. So like down to Washougal or, to a store. So just keep that in mind, but you can still be close in and have a rural feel. So I love that about this area where you can live in a more cookie cutter track home, something that's been built in the last 30 years. You can find historic homes with a lot of charm. You can find land, you can find low maintenance, you can find condos. Like in every city, there's a little bit of something. And so it's definitely not one size fits all. It's more what's your vibe, what's your budget, and then do you like those particular homes? So I usually encourage people to pick, unless they're like dead set, like I definitely want to live on Prudent Hill. I want my kids to go to Dorothy Fox Elementary School. Okay, let's confine our search there. But if you're like, well, I'm flexible on schools and I care more about the house than I do the particular part of town I live in, then I would say pick 2 to 3 homes. Like let's look in Vancouver, Camas, and Ridgefield and see what's gonna fit and click, and start broad and narrow it in. The other big thing to note about Washougal is that there is a lot of development happening here. So the Vancouver waterfront was developed by out-of-area developers. Some of the developments that are happening on the east side of Vancouver, like the Vancouver Innovation Center and the Columbia Palisades, are from out-of-state developers. The Washougal Camas port is developing a waterfront kind of on the border between Camas and Washougal. And the Washougal waterfront is developed by a local Washougal developer and is probably going to be just as nice, but maybe a little smaller than the Vancouver waterfront. So even if you decide to live in rural Washougal, know that over the next 5 to 10 years, you are going to have access to nice restaurants and a walking area right on the river that's for everyone to enjoy, just like the Vancouver waterfront has now. And that brings us to city number 5, which is Ridgefield, Washington. Ridgefield to me is one of the most exciting cities in the Clark County, Southwest Washington area. The population, for better or for worse, has more than doubled over the last 10 years. And that's because Ridgefield offers more rolling hills. Developing rural parts of Camas and Washougal into like vast master plan subdivisions with all these amenities is not realistic because of the geography. You're bumping up against that Cascade Mountain range. Whereas Ridgefield, as you go north, has more rolling hills. There are mountains, so you kind of have it's still kind of a narrow area you've got in terms of like looking at it from a developer perspective, because as the Columbia River cuts through Oregon and Washington, Vancouver and Portland, when it gets to the end of Vancouver near Vancouver Lake, the river turns north. And as you move north along the river, that's when you'll hit Washougal. So to the east, you'll still have mountains and hills, especially as you're approaching Woodland, but you've got the river on the one side. So development here in Southwest Washington, the only place it really has to go, because the demand is there, but the only place it really has to go is north. And that's why Ridgefield is so popular, because you're still really close to Salmon Creek. Salmon Creek is getting a Trader Joe's, by the way, and Ridgefield is getting a Costco. I was on a Zoom last night with some clients from Texas, and I was like, those are the 2 like cultish grocery stores. But I mean that in the best way, like a positive cult, like cult culture, you know? Like people love Trader Joe's, people love Costco. And so previously there's a Costco on the north part of Vancouver, and then there's a Costco on the Vancouver-Camas border. And Trader Joe's is in East Vancouver off of the 205 freeway and Mill Plain, which is a very heavily trafficked area. So I'm very excited for the Salmon Creek Trader Joe's and also the Ridgefield Costco. But Ridgefield has just been growing so much because of the availability of land. You have lots of farmers out there. My favorite farm to go buy organic, fresh, local vegetable starts from every year is Millennium Farms. You just have a ton of good things going on in Ridgefield. And I will say that the Ridgefield city is doing a fantastic job at managing the development. They are putting the work in on infrastructure to make sure that the roads can handle the development. They're building new schools. They are being strategic. I think that Ridgefield is handling their growth really, really smartly. So Ridgefield went from 10 years ago being under 6,000 people to now over 12,000 people in 2023. And my clients who live there love it. So if you want land, you can easily get 5 acres in Ridgefield. It is going to cost you, but you can find so many great new construction developments of all sizes. Starter homes, you can find luxury homes, you can find everything in between. So Ridgefield fits a lot of people, and as long as you don't mind the growing pains of living in Ridgefield, meaning the only grocery store there is Ross Hours, and it's expensive. It's like Whole Foods, it's expensive. But if you get on the freeway and you come down to Salmon Creek for about a 10-minute drive, you'll have through and through like a Costco, Fred Meyer, Trader Joe's kind of girl. So you've got what you need in Ridgefield now, and it's very quiet and quaint and family oriented. People like the schools there. The schools are very new, well developed, and I think that the growth that Ridgefield's going to experience over the next 10 years is going to be astounding. I think that Ridgefield is going to hold its value. I think that Ridgefield's only going to get more and more popular, especially as the competition for living in Camas is increasing. I think that Ridgefield is the new Camas, and I did a video about that right here. So you've got this rural picturesque setting where you don't have as many hikes, but what they do have is the city is making a lot of these new developers build walking trails through the community. And then you also have the wildlife refuge in Ridgefield. So that's a great place to go down and explore if you want to be connected to nature and outdoors. So I don't know, I love so much about Ridgefield. It's also similar to Battleground and Washougal in that you do have farm-side road stands. My dear friend and one of my preferred lenders, Rebecca Cruz Bustamante, actually has an apple farm that you can support. So those are what Jared and I call the 5 boroughs of Southwest Washington: Vancouver, Camas, Battleground, Washougal, and Ridgefield. They are all great places to choose from, whether you're looking at city limits in any of those actual cities, or if you're looking in the unincorporated parts on the outskirts of those cities. I think that Vancouver, Washington, and the Southwest Washington area are a great place to live. I couldn't be happier here. I cannot imagine myself moving back to California, which is where I grew up. I love the weather here. I love the people, the lifestyle, the speed of life. It's just, for me, it was such a good fit. And I find that when my clients say, I want to move to Southwest Washington, and here's my list of reasons why, they find those reasons once they get here. They're like, yes, I wanted this kind of weather and I got it. I wanted this type of lifestyle and I got it. I wanted to be more outdoors and I was able to achieve it. So if you're contemplating Vancouver and you're like, this is what I think it'll be like and this is what I'm hoping, you will probably be right and you'll probably get it. Because I think that through this YouTube channel, I've really tried to do my best over the past few years to put out an accurate representation of what you'll find when you get here, and my clients have agreed. And you can watch testimonial videos from them. I'll link that playlist here. And I would love for you to become a client of mine so I can help you find the bird's eye view on real estate. So if you'd like to work with me in the bird's eye team, I would be more than happy to assist you. You can always shoot me a text at 360-818-4438. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. You can also book a Zoom down below. My Zoom link is in the description below. And I'm glad that you made it to the end of this video. If you have any questions at all, drop them in the comments. Let me know your opinion. Did I do a good job covering the 5 boroughs of Southwest Washington? Let me know. Make sure to give this video a like, make sure you're still subscribed, and I just thank you all for being here. I will catch you next time. Ciao. Don't necessarily know, no, start over, okay. Where was I? Vancouver, Washington actually started the and the way that Vancouver has kind of developed, we started out, and the way that Vancouver developed, how did it start out? Darn it, I was hoping to have this all ready to go. You have to and see how close we have when you're looking at the water that comes from. Much of Camas is on what is called a, I don't know, what is it called? So this neighborhood, plus you have tons of farms. Oh, you would think I would know the roads where we live. Let me put it up on my phone. So that's something. Damn dogs. So average, maybe I did say it again. There's, but even then, sort of. Easily within 50. Because the only here are the different areas. This is, my Zoom link is in the calendar. So cut that.